James, a retired veteran in his late 40s, moves into what he thinks is going to be his quiet little slice of suburban heaven. He's got his loyal service dog, Max, a big, beautiful German shepherd who's been by his side through thick and thin. James isn't looking for trouble. He just wants peace. Maybe a few friendly neighbors to wave at while he's mowing the lawn. But oh boy, trouble finds him faster than a nosy neighbor with binoculars. Enter Karen Martinez. Now, if you've ever dealt with an HOA, or honestly, if you've ever dealt with anyone named Karen, you already know where this is going. Karen is the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, armed with a clipboard and an attitude that could curdle milk. She's got her perfectly manicured lawn, her live, laugh, love sign in the window, and an uncanny ability to ruin someone's day before breakfast. James hasn't even unpacked all his boxes when Karen shows up at his door. No, welcome to the neighborhood? Or, need help finding the nearest grocery store? Nope. Instead, she launches straight into her HOA spiel about rules and regulations. And let me tell you, she's got rules for everything: how tall your grass can be, what color your mailbox has to be, and apparently what kind of dog you're allowed to own. Karen takes one look at Max and wrinkles her nose like she just smelled something foul. "That dog is way too big for this neighborhood," she says, tapping her clipboard like it's some kind of magic wand. James calmly explains that Max is a service dog, trained to help him manage his PTSD, and that federal law protects service animals from discrimination. But Karen? Oh no, she's not having it. "Well," she huffs, "HOA rules are HOA rules, and I don't care what kind of special treatment you think you deserve." Yeah, she actually did air quotes around special treatment. Classy move. Now James is a patient man. He didn't survive combat by losing his cool over petty nonsense, but even he can feel his blood pressure rising. He tries to reason with her, explaining the Americans with Disabilities Act ADA, and how it overrides HOA policies when it comes to service animals. But Karen waves him off like he's trying to sell her a timeshare. "Rules are rules," she repeats before stomping off in her orthopedic sandals. And just like that, James realizes he's not dealing with a rational human being. He's dealing with a full-blown HOA dictator. Over the next few days, Karen ramps up her campaign against Max. She starts leaving passive-aggressive notes on James' door. Things like, "Your dog is scaring the children," "There are no children on his street," and "This neighborhood has standards." She even sends out a mass email to the HOA members warning them about the dangerous animal living among them. It's like she thinks Max is some kind of rabid wolf instead of a trained service dog who wouldn't hurt a fly. And here's where I want to hear from you. Folks, have you ever had to deal with someone who thought they were above the law? Maybe it was an HOA tyrant like Karen, or just some busybody who couldn't mind their own business. Drop your stories in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in thinking these people are absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, back to James. He tries ignoring Karen at first. He figures she'll get bored eventually and move on to harassing someone else about their flower beds or Christmas lights. But nope. Karen is relentless. She starts taking photos of Max every time James walks him around the block, muttering under her breath about violations. She even corners one of the neighbors at the mailbox and tries to convince them that Max is some kind of ticking time bomb waiting to attack. James knows he needs to start documenting everything, because let's face it, people like Karen don't stop until they're forced to stop. He sets up security cameras around his property and starts keeping copies of every note she leaves on his door. He doesn't want war, but if Karen wants to pick a fight, he's ready. And trust me when I say, this is just the beginning of the chaos. You're not going to believe what happens next. So, if you thought Karen was going to back off after James stood his ground, you clearly don't know how people like Karen operate. Oh no, she's just getting warmed up. This is the kind of woman who probably has a Pinterest board titled, "How to Ruin Someone's Day in 10 Easy Steps." And now, her entire mission in life seems to be making James and Max as miserable as possible. It starts small. Little things like Karen leaving more notes on James' door. But these aren't your average passive-aggressive HOA memos. No, these are full-blown manifestos. One of them reads, "Your dog is a menace to this community, and I will not rest until order is restored." Order? Lady, it's a dog, not a biker gang. Then she steps it up a notch. One morning, James wakes up to find flyers plastered all over the neighborhood. They've got a picture of Max, probably taken by Karen during one of her creepy photo stakeouts, and the words "dangerous dog" in bold letters. Underneath, there's a list of completely made-up incidents, like Max supposedly growling at kids and chasing cats. It's so ridiculous that James almost laughs. Almost. But then he realizes how far Karen is willing to go to turn the neighborhood against him. And let me tell you, Karen doesn't stop there. Oh no, she's got more tricks up her sleeve. One day, James catches her teenage son sneaking into his yard with a plastic bag full of, you guessed it, dog poop. The kid's trying to plant evidence to make it look like Max has been leaving messes all over the place. James steps outside just as the kid is mid-throw and says, "You might want to rethink your life choices, kid." The boy freezes like a deer in headlights before bolting back to Karen's house. Classic. At this point, James knows he needs to get serious about documenting everything. He sets up more security cameras around his property and starts keeping a detailed log of every interaction with Karen. He even saves one of the flyers as evidence because he knows this whole thing is going to blow up sooner or later. Now here's where things really get out of hand. One afternoon, James is out in his front yard playing fetch with Max when Karen comes marching over with her trusty clipboard in hand. She looks like she just stepped out of an infomercial for overpriced yoga pants, except there's nothing zen about her vibe. "Your dog is destroying property values," she snaps, pointing at Max like he's some kind of criminal mastermind. James takes a deep breath and says, "Karen, Max hasn't done anything wrong. He's a service dog. You can't discriminate against him. It's against federal law." But Karen doesn't care about federal law. She cares about her law, the sacred HOA rules that she treats like they were handed down from Mount Sinai. "I don't care what kind of dog he is," she says, pulling out a spray bottle from her tote bag like some kind of deranged dog whisperer. "He doesn't belong here." And then, get this, she actually sprays Max with water, right there in broad daylight. Max flinches but stays calm because he's better trained than most humans I know. Meanwhile, James is standing there in absolute disbelief. "Did you just spray my dog?" he asks, his voice low and steady. The kind of tone that makes you realize you've just made a huge mistake. Karen doesn't even flinch. "I'm enforcing the rules," she says smugly before turning on her heel and marching back to her house like she just won some kind of victory. Now let me pause here for a second because I need to ask. What would you do if someone sprayed your dog? Would you lose it right then and there? Or would you play it cool like James and start plotting your next move? Let me know in the comments because I'm dying to hear how other people would handle this level of crazy. Anyway, back to the story. James knows that what Karen just did isn't just obnoxious, it's illegal. Service dogs are protected under federal law, and harassing or interfering with them is a serious offense. So James does what any smart person would do. He adds this latest incident to his growing pile of evidence and starts researching his legal options. Meanwhile, Karen seems completely oblivious to the fact that she's digging herself into a hole she won't be able to climb out of. She keeps strutting around the neighborhood like she owns the place, probably thinking she's untouchable because she's got the HOA backing her up. But little does she know, James isn't just sitting back and taking it anymore. He's gearing up for a fight, and trust me when I say it's going to be one for the history books. Stay tuned because things are about to get real. After weeks of Karen's harassment, James decides it's time to confront the situation head-on. And what better place to do that than at the monthly HOA meeting? Now, if you've never been to an HOA meeting, let me paint you a picture. It's like a high school drama club, except everyone's over 40 and arguing about trash bins instead of prom dates. James walks into the community center with Max by his side. He's calm, collected, and ready for battle. Karen? Oh, she's already there, holding court at the front of the room like she's running for mayor of Crazy Town. She's got her clipboard, her stack of evidence, and a smug grin that screams, "I've already won." The meeting kicks off with the usual nonsense. Budget updates, landscaping complaints, but James knows it's only a matter of time before Karen brings up her favorite topic. Max, sure enough, about halfway through the agenda, Karen stands up and announces, "We need to address the issue of dangerous animals in our neighborhood." Dangerous animals? Lady, this isn't a wildlife documentary. is a suburban cul-de-sac. Karen launches into her speech about how Max is a threat to community safety and violating HOA regulations. She even pulls out a slideshow, yes, an actual slideshow, with photos of Max walking around the neighborhood. One of them shows him sniffing a bush, which Karen dramatically labels as aggressive behavior. You can't make this stuff up. James lets her rant for a while because he knows she's digging her own grave. But when Karen accuses him of faking his disability to get away with breaking the rules, he decides it's time to shut her down. "Excuse me," James says, standing up. His voice is steady but firm, the kind of tone that makes everyone in the room sit up a little straighter. "Max is a federally protected service dog. What you're doing isn't just wrong. It's illegal." Karen scoffs like he just told her the earth is round. "HOA rules are HOA rules," she snaps, "and no one is above them." James pulls out his folder of evidence and starts laying it all out for the room. He explains the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, and how it protects service animals from discrimination. He shows them video footage from his security cameras, Karen trespassing on his property, her son planting fake dog poop, and yes, her spraying Max with water. The room goes silent except for Karen muttering under her breath about fake news. But James isn't done yet. "And since you seem to think HOA rules override federal law," he continues, pulling out printed copies of ADA regulations, "let me educate you on what happens when someone violates these protections." Karen looks like she's about to explode. Her face turns redder than a stop sign as she tries to interrupt him. "This isn't relevant," she shrieks. "You're just trying to make me look bad." James doesn't even flinch. "You don't need my help with that," he says coolly before turning back to the rest of the room. Now here's where things get interesting. Barbara Thompson, the HOA president who usually backs Karen up without question, starts shifting uncomfortably in her seat. She knows James has them cornered, and she doesn't want to go down with Karen's sinking ship. "Perhaps we should consult legal counsel before proceeding further," Barbara says cautiously. Karen glares at her like she just committed treason. "Legal counsel? We don't need legal counsel. We need action." But Barbara isn't budging. She knows this situation has gone way beyond petty HOA squabbles, and she doesn't want to end up in court over Karen's vendetta. The meeting ends without any resolution, but James walks out feeling victorious. He knows he's planted seeds of doubt in the minds of the other HOA members, and more importantly, he's shown Karen that he won't be intimidated. As he leaves the community center with Max by his side, one of the neighbors stops him in the parking lot. It's an older gentleman named Tom, a quiet guy who usually keeps to himself. "Good job in there," Tom says gruffly. "Karen's been running this place like a dictatorship for years. It's about time someone stood up to her." James nods and thanks him before heading home. He knows this fight isn't over, but now he has allies. And trust me when I say, Karen has no idea what's coming next. After the HOA meeting fiasco, James realizes that reasoning with Karen is like trying to teach a cat to fetch. It's pointless and just makes you look crazy. So he decides it's time to bring out the big guns. And by big guns, I mean the United States government. James files a formal complaint with the Department of Justice under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Now, if you don't know much about the ADA, let me tell you, it's not something you want to mess with. Violating it isn't just a slap on the wrist situation, it's a federal offense. And Karen? She's about to learn that lesson the hard way. While James waits for the DOJ to review his case, Karen doubles down on her antics. She starts sending out more emails to the HOA members, claiming James is endangering the community and refusing to follow basic rules. She even tries to organize a neighborhood petition to have Max removed. Spoiler alert, it doesn't go well. Most of the neighbors are either too scared of Karen to get involved or secretly rooting for James. A few even start quietly supporting him, like Tom from the parking lot and an older woman named Linda who's been on Karen's bad side ever since she put up Christmas lights too early one year. But Karen doesn't care about losing allies. She's on a mission. She starts showing up at James' house unannounced, taking photos of his yard and muttering about violations. At one point, she even tries to measure the height of his grass with a ruler. James catches her on camera and calmly says, "Karen, if you don't leave my property right now, I'll have to call the police." She storms off, but not before yelling something about community standards. Meanwhile, James is busy building his case. He compiles all his evidence, security footage, photos, notes from Karen, and sends it off to the DOJ along with a detailed account of everything that's happened since he moved in. He knows it's only a matter of time before Karen's reign of terror comes crashing down. And then, one sunny afternoon, it happens. James is sitting on his porch with Max when two black SUVs pull up in front of his house. Out step 3 federal agents wearing suits that practically scream, "Official business." They introduce themselves and explain that they're here to investigate his complaint. James invites them inside and lays out all his evidence like he's presenting a case on law and order. The agents nod along as they review everything. Karen trespassing on his property, her son planting fake dog poop, her spraying Max with water, and it's clear they're not impressed with her behavior. "We'll handle this," one of them says before heading back to their SUVs. And handle it they do. The next HOA meeting rolls around, and this time, it's not just James who shows up. It's also those same federal agents. They walk into the room like they own the place and immediately ask for Karen and Barbara Thompson by name. You can practically hear a pin drop as everyone watches them hand over legal notices outlining multiple violations of ADA laws. Karen tries to argue because of course she does, but one of the agents cuts her off. "Ma'am," he says firmly, "this isn't up for debate. You've violated federal law, and there will be consequences." Barbara looks like she wants to crawl under the table and disappear. She stammers something about not knowing the rules before announcing her resignation as HOA president on the spot. Karen? She's still trying to play innocent. "I was just enforcing community standards," she protests. "Community standards don't override federal law." One of the agents replies coolly before walking out. The room erupts into chaos as neighbors start whispering and pointing fingers at Karen. Some are furious that she dragged them into this mess. Others are just relieved that someone finally put her in her place. James doesn't say much during all this. He doesn't need to. He knows he's won this round, and he's more than happy to let Karen stew in her own embarrassment. If you thought Karen had learned her lesson after being served by federal agents, well, bless your heart. This is Karen we're talking about. The woman's got the self-awareness of a brick wall and the determination of a raccoon digging through a trash can at midnight. She's not giving up, oh no. In fact, she's about to take things to a whole new level of crazy. After the HOA meeting disaster, Karen goes into full damage control mode. She starts spreading rumors around the neighborhood, telling anyone who will listen that James manipulated the system, and that the federal agents were just there for a routine check. Routine check? Lady, this isn't a health inspection at a diner. It's a federal investigation into your illegal antics. But here's the thing. Not everyone is buying her story anymore. Some of the neighbors who've been quietly watching from the sidelines are starting to turn against her. Tom, Linda, and a few others begin sharing their own stories of Karen's harassment. Like the time she fined someone $500 for having an unauthorized garden gnome, or when she threatened to report a family for painting their front door the wrong shade of blue. Turns out, Karen's been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, and James' case is just the tip of the iceberg. And then comes the real turning point. Karen's teenage daughter, Emma. Now, Emma is your typical teenager. Glued to her phone, rolling her eyes at everything her mom says, but even she has her limits. One night, after yet another argument with Karen about how she's ruining their reputation, Emma decides she's had enough. She sneaks into Karen's home office and finds a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Recordings of HOA meetings where Karen brags about targeting certain neighbors, emails where she conspires with Barbara Thompson to fabricate violations, and even drafts of those ridiculous flyers about Max. Emma doesn't just sit on this information. Oh no. She uploads it all to a shared drive and anonymously sends it to James with a simple message. "You'll know what to do with this." When James opens the files, he can't believe what he's seeing. It's like Christmas came early. He forwards everything to his lawyer and the DOJ investigators handling his case. But he doesn't stop there. He also shares some of the juiciest bits with his neighbors. Just to make sure everyone understands exactly who they've been dealing with all these years. Meanwhile, Karen is blissfully unaware that her own daughter has turned whistleblower. She's too busy plotting her next move, breaking into James' backyard to plant more evidence against Max. That's right. She actually thinks this is a good idea. One night around midnight, Karen sneaks into James' yard armed with another bag of fake dog poop and what looks like a can of spray paint, because apparently vandalism is her plan B. But what she doesn't realize is that James' security cameras aren't just for show. They've got night vision and motion detection. The second she steps onto his property, an alert goes straight to James' phone. James watches in real time as Karen fumbles around in his yard like some kind of amateur burglar. He could call the police right then and there. But where's the fun in that? Instead, he grabs his phone and activates the camera's built-in speaker. "Karen," he says calmly but firmly, "you're on camera. Leave now or I'll call the cops." Karen freezes like a deer caught in headlights. For a moment, it looks like she might actually listen. But then she doubles down on her stupidity and tries to argue with him. "I'm just inspecting for violations," she yells at the camera. "Violations?" James replies with a laugh. "You mean like trespassing? Because that's what you're doing right now." At this point, Max starts barking from inside the house. Not aggressively, just enough to let Karen know he's there, and that seems to be enough to scare her off. She drops her bag of fake evidence and scurries back to her house like some kind of cartoon villain who just got foiled by Scooby-Doo. The next morning, James hands over the footage to both his lawyer and local law enforcement. Within hours, officers show up at Karen's door and arrest her for trespassing and tampering with evidence. The sight of Karen being led away in handcuffs is enough to send shockwaves through the neighborhood. And let me tell you, this is when people really start turning on her. Neighbors who were once too afraid to speak up suddenly find their voices. They start sharing stories about Karen at every opportunity. At block parties, on social media, even in line at the grocery store. It's like everyone has been waiting for this moment to finally take her down. But here's the best part. While Karen is sitting in jail waiting for her arraignment, news of her arrest starts spreading beyond the neighborhood. Local reporters catch wind of the story, and before long it goes viral. Headlines like "HOA tyrant arrested after harassing disabled veteran" start popping up everywhere. Karen wanted attention? Well, now she's got it, and not in the way she hoped. Karen's arrest sends shockwaves not just through the neighborhood, but across the entire town. By now, she's gone from being the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA to a cautionary tale about what happens when you mess with the wrong person and, federal law. But if you think this is where it ends, oh no, we're just getting to the good part. Let's start with Karen herself. After her late-night escapade in James' backyard lands her in jail, she's released on bail a couple of days later. You'd think spending a night in a cell might humble her a little, but nope, Karen comes out swinging. She starts ranting on social media about how she's the real victim and how James is manipulating the system to destroy her life. She even tries to start a GoFundMe for her legal defense, claiming she's being unfairly targeted by big government. Spoiler alert, it doesn't go well. The page gets flooded with comments like, "Maybe don't harass disabled veterans next time," and "This is what happens when you act like a tyrant." Meanwhile, the DOJ wraps up their investigation into Karen and the HOA board. And let me tell you, the results are not pretty. Turns out, Karen and her buddy Barbara Thompson had been bending, or outright breaking, rules for years to maintain their stranglehold on the neighborhood. They'd been selectively enforcing HOA regulations, fabricating violations against people they didn't like, and even pocketing some of the HOA dues for administrative expenses. Yeah, it's as shady as it sounds. The DOJ slaps Karen and Barbara with hefty fines for violating ADA laws and engaging in discriminatory practices. But that's not all. Karen also faces criminal charges for harassment, trespassing, and tampering with evidence. Barbara, sensing that things are about to go from bad to worse for her, cuts a deal with prosecutors and agrees to testify against Karen in exchange for leniency. Classic move. Throw your partner in crime under the bus to save your own skin. Back in the neighborhood, things are falling apart for Karen faster than a dollar store lawn chair. The HOA holds an emergency meeting to vote on removing her from her position, and let me tell you, it's not even close. The vote is unanimous. Karen is officially out as head of the HOA. As she storms out of the meeting room, one neighbor mutters loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Savage." But wait, it gets better. With Karen gone and Barbara having resigned weeks earlier, the HOA elects new leadership. Tom, the quiet guy who supported James from the start, is voted in as president. His first order of business? Overhauling the HOA rules to make them fairer and more transparent. He also issues an official apology to James and Max on behalf of the entire neighborhood. Speaking of James, our guy finally gets some well-deserved recognition for standing up to Karen's nonsense. Local disability rights organizations catch wind of his story and reach out to offer their support. One group even invites him to speak at an event about advocating for service dog protections under the ADA. James isn't much of a public speaker. He prefers to let his actions do the talking. But he agrees because he knows how important it is to raise awareness. And Max? Oh, Max becomes something of a local celebrity. People start stopping James during their walks just to say hi to Max or give him treats, with James' permission, of course. Someone even suggests making Max an honorary member of the HOA, which James politely declines because let's be real, Max has better things to do than deal with HOA drama. As for Karen, well, let's just say karma isn't done with her yet. With her reputation in tatters and legal troubles piling up, she decides to put her house on the market and move somewhere else. But here's the kicker. No one wants to buy from her. Word about her antics has spread so far that potential buyers either lowball her or back out entirely once they realize who owns the house. In one final act of desperation, Karen tries to play nice with some of her neighbors, offering baked goods and awkward apologies. But it's too little too late. The neighborhood has moved on without her. And then there's Emma, Karen's teenage daughter who secretly helped expose her mom's behavior. After everything comes out, Emma moves in with her dad, Karen's ex-husband, in another state. Before she leaves, she sends James one last anonymous message, thanks for standing up to her. So where does that leave us? Well, James finally gets what he wanted all along, peace and quiet in his little slice of suburban paradise. Sure, it took a federal investigation and a whole lot of drama to get there, but hey, sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire. And as he sits on his porch one evening watching Max nap at his feet, James can't help but smile. Because at the end of the day, justice wasn't just served, it was served with style. After months of chaos, drama, and Karen's relentless antics, the neighborhood is finally starting to feel like the peaceful place James had hoped for when he first moved in. But don't worry, this story doesn't just fizzle out, it ends with a bang. Let's dive in. With Karen officially out of the picture and probably Googling countries without extradition treaties, the neighborhood begins to heal. Tom, the new HOA president, wastes no time cleaning up Karen's mess. He implements new policies that prioritize fairness and transparency, including a rule that requires all HOA decisions to be voted on by the community instead of dictated by one or two people. It's not exactly groundbreaking stuff, but compared to Karen's reign of terror, it feels like a revolution. James becomes something of a local hero. Neighbors who were too scared to speak up before start coming out of the woodwork to thank him for standing his ground. Some even admit they were secretly rooting for him the whole time but didn't want to risk Karen's wrath. James just smiles and tells them better late than never. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. One day, James gets a call from his lawyer with some surprising news. Karen has decided to plead guilty to her charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. Apparently, she realized that fighting the case would only make things worse for her, and let's be honest, she was never going to win anyway. As part of her plea deal, Karen is required to pay restitution not just to James but also to several other neighbors she harassed over the years. The amount isn't life-changing, but it's enough for James to treat himself and Max to something special. And what does he do with the money? Well, James decides it's time for Max to get a little recognition for everything he's been through. He donates part of the restitution to a local organization that trains service dogs for veterans, ensuring that more people like him can benefit from these incredible animals. The rest goes toward building a custom doggy play area in his backyard, a place where Max can run, jump, and chase tennis balls to his heart's content. Meanwhile, Karen's humiliation continues. Her attempt to sell her house turns into a disaster as buyers keep backing out once they learn about her reputation. Eventually, she's forced to sell at a loss just to get out of town. Rumor has it she moved into an apartment complex where the landlord has strict rules about pets, and you can bet she's not running any HOAs there. But wait, there's more. The story gains national attention after a local reporter writes an article titled "HOA Tyrant Meets Her Match: How One Veteran Took Down Suburban Oppression." The piece goes viral, sparking debates across social media about HOAs and their abuse of power. Disability rights organizations start sharing James' story as an example of how important it is to stand up for your rights. James even gets invited onto a morning talk show to share his experience. At first, he's hesitant. He doesn't love being in the spotlight, but he agrees because he knows how much awareness this could bring to service dog protections under the ADA. He brings Max along for moral support, and because, let's face it, Max is the real star here. By the end of the interview, both James and Max have won over the audience and probably half of America. But perhaps the most satisfying moment comes from Emma, Karen's teenage daughter, who secretly helped expose her mom. A few weeks after moving in with her dad, Emma sends James one final message: "I'm sorry for everything my mom put you through. Thank you for showing me what standing up for what's right looks like." James replies simply, "You did the right thing too." And with that, the saga comes full circle. As James sits on his porch one evening watching Max chase tennis balls in his new play area, he reflects on everything that's happened, the battles fought, the lessons learned, and the unexpected allies gained along the way. He never wanted war with Karen or anyone else, but sometimes life throws you into situations where you have no choice but to fight back. In the end, justice wasn't just served, it was served with style, humor, and maybe even a little poetic irony. And as far as James is concerned, that's about as good as it gets. So here's to Max, the real hero of the story, and here's to standing up against entitlement and tyranny wherever you find it. Because if one retired veteran and his loyal service dog can take down an HOA dictator, well, anything is possible. And with that, folks, we wrap up this wild ride. Thanks for sticking around, and remember, if you ever find yourself dealing with someone like Karen, keep calm, document everything, and let karma do its thing. Until next time.